this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Welcome to this episode of Life Science Success. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Don, and I'm a digital marketer in life sciences. And before we get started, I have just a quick message from our sponsor. This episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by D3 Digital Media Marketing. Dive into the digital world with confidence and creativity on your side. D3 Digital Media Marketing is your all-in-one solution for making a lasting impact online. From the vibrant, engaging world of social media marketing, podcasts, and webinars to the strategic depths of website development, SEO, pay-per-click, email, and content marketing, we tailor our approach to fit your unique brand story. Let's elevate your presence, connect with your audience, and drive success together. Your digital journey starts here. Visit d3digitalmedia.com to learn more. In this episode, my guest is Nishtha Jain. She's a strategic thought leader with over 14 years of experience in global information technology, specializing in digital technology transformations and innovative strategies within the life science sector. So with that, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Don. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's the pleasure is all mine.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. And would you mind just taking a little bit of time to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, and then what led you to especially technology and then also life sciences?
Yeah, so thank you. And, I think I'll just start with my journey here. And it's, something I always try to share because, it's very important to share where you are coming from to you have to always look back to see where, why you are here today. So again, I was born and raised in India, and that's where I grew up. And, with growing up with Indian parents, the only option and the only career choice a person gets is to be a doctor. And, I did not had any other. So that was the only one that I had. And, that's sort of what led me and my passion for biology and life sciences. So I was definitely a top biology student. And, in India, I also pursued the medicine exams to try to get into a medical school, but it's very competitive. So essentially, it was only for 200 ranks, like 200 seats. There are millions of students who compete. So it's very, it's very difficult to get into medical schools in India. So obviously, I did not make the cut. Then I tried one more year to make the cut, and I actually did not do anything the whole year, but just to study for those exams.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, I again, the next year was also difficult. I actually got sick in that year and, couldn't make it the cut. But then I asked myself that, I have this passion for life sciences, and what are the other fields that I could potentially pursue my career in? And biotechnology was a very, very brand new field. And this is back in 2005, 2006 timeframe that, it just launched. And people said in 10 years from now or 15 years from now, you will see how it's going to pick up. And actually, that was a true prediction because we all saw during COVID, how biotechnology is so critical field. But that led me to, pursue my engineering, essentially focusing in biotechnology. And what that did is it not only gave me a great exposure to understanding biopharmaceutical world, but also technology world of how, if you combine technology with the sciences, there is so much untapped potential there. And I became really, really, I pursued my engineering. And then, I actually took a job at Accenture as a software engineer back in India. And it was, I think, 6 months into my job that I realized that, I don't want to completely focus on technology, but I want to still have the life science aspect of it in my life. So So, that's when I decided to move to United States. And the rest is history.
Yeah, and I mean, you were telling me beforehand that you have some interesting news as well. You just received a 40 under 40 award as well.
Yes, yes. So essentially it's Boston Business Journal is one of the very popular journals in Boston area. And I was recognized as in their 40 under 40 list recently. And then the funny story there is that I actually, like how people have certain lists and like dreams, that bucket list, that, things that cannot happen in real, but we still aspire. So I had like an item saying 40 under 40 in Forbes. But then I when I turned 35, which was a year ago, I said to myself, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna make it, because for Forbes 40 under 40 you have to have a company, or you have to have an IPO or something along those lines. And then I said to myself, let me make a travel goal, which is 40 under 40 countries, which is I will travel 40 countries before 40. So I actually completed that goal this year. But I never thought that actually there could be a list that I could be under, and that would be called 40 under 40. So really, really, something that I kind of manifested, but I did not think it would come true. So I'm really, really excited about that.
I think these things are so important, though. I mean, I feel like it's a good acknowledgement of hard work that people put in, first of all. And then secondly, just to be honored and be, recognized is something that also gives you more momentum to go do other great things as well.
Yeah, Don, I totally agree. And, again, I know just before we launched into this podcast, we were talking about this piece called imposter syndrome. So again, when I was on the list, I felt exactly the same. But then, I recently met with some of the folks there as they are starting to do promotions for 40 under 40. And when I met the people at Boston Business Journal, it was I could imagine and see, okay, why I'm here. So then, I have to reflect on my journey and, see, okay, yeah, I did work hard and got here. But yeah, but it's definitely true. And, again, reward, just human psychology, like reward definitely makes you more motivated and to do better.
Yeah, and so that brings me to my next question, which really focuses in on your career journey overall. So you've had more than 14 years in information technology. I'm sure that you've had different pivotal moments, which the 40 under 40 could be one of them. But what are some of the key points that sort of led you to the point where you are now?
Yeah, so firstly, when I actually moved to United States to pursue my master's from Georgetown University. So I was, again, I finished a master's in biotechnology, and again, even at that time, biotechnology wasn't, like that hot of a field, and people were still trying to understand. There were very few biotech companies, and in my program at Georgetown, we actually studied all those companies. So I remember, I chose GlaxoSmithKline, which is GSK, as the company that I wanted to present on. As like thesis of my program, or sort of, when you have that ending of the program, you have to present about, what you learned. So I presented about GSK, knowing very little that I could actually get a job in that company. So I would say, that was probably the like most pivotal moment, where before joining GSK, I had almost spent around that 6 to 7 years in healthcare IT, in data space and technology space. So I was like getting more into core technology area, but then I always felt like I really care about patients, and I care about how the medicines are delivered to them, and I really care about how healthcare could be improved, rather than just being in any business and trying to solve technology problems. So that's when I think I would say that was my first pivotal moment, where I got, job to work for GlaxoSmithKline, which is a big British biopharma company. And, again, and that's where my mindset started to change. And I started to align my life's purpose to say, okay, I'm in the right field. So I would say, like that was the first moment, but like without doubt, I think the most pivotal moment, which whenever I reflect back on my journey, is actually me moving to Boston. So I joined a company called Biogen, which is focused in neuroscience essentially, and it's making some of the very rare drugs that are for unmet needs and not for the like major population. So because of that role, I got to move in Boston. And again, like without, any doubt, Boston is essentially one of those like very vibrant city. But along with that, it has more than 200 plus biopharma companies, like biotechs and pharmaceutical companies. And most of the pharmas in the United States have their presence in the Boston area. So I think honestly, after moving here in the past 3 years, I've seen so many more and more opportunities for me to be able to meet with like-minded individuals. And again, just in general, learn more about the industry and, how, sort of drugs can be made faster, how various aspects of, pharma value chain could be impacted. So I would say that would be like the most pivotal moment. And again, it was more of leap of faith where I was pretty well settled in Pennsylvania, with like, pretty much I had a great circle and like great, sort of my roots there. But then when this opportunity came, it was one of those decisions whether, and I told myself I'm going to try it for a year and then I'm going to, move back if I don't like it. But then there hasn't been a moment I haven't liked it. So this is something I also want to share, whenever people, because I know a lot of people find certain roles that impresses them and they really want to pursue those roles, but then they're like, oh, it's not a remote role, I'm not going to take it, or I'm not even going to try. So I think that is something I would encourage people to say, even if, you have to move for a job opportunity, they should be open to it. Like because sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, my only struggle with Boston, it was so I was with General Electric for a number of years, and they had me in Waukesha, Wisconsin, as a part of that, and it's just so cold in the winter. So that's the only reservation I would have would be, okay, so time out. Can I go somewhere else whenever you guys have winter? So that
I totally hear you, Don. Again, I'm a snowbird. So I'm never, so how I got to my 40 under 40 goal is by utilizing all the winters to travel. So essentially I try to keep my vacation time to save all the vacation time to travel around those months. So, again, I totally hear you. It is bad, but because of global warming, and I know I was sharing with you, we have fall season this year, but it's warmer than usual. So again, because of global warming, we haven't gotten any major snowstorms for at least past 3 years. So Boston eventually would be a place people would want to live in, actually, because it's going to get warmer.
I'll knock on wood for you. So hopefully there's no major storms. So let's talk a little bit about your role. So, I mean, my understanding is that your role is the head of innovation and digital technology at Takeda. And so when you look at the primary responsibilities of that role, what do they encompass? And then how does it tie to the company's mission?
Sure. Yeah. So my role currently is head of innovation and digital technology for R&D quality. So essentially, this R&D quality is a global function, which provides quality oversight to the entire R&D pipeline, beginning from discovery through phase 4. and pharmacovigilance to clinical and commercial products and devices. So pretty much the entire life cycle, with responsibility across all the GXPs and, delivering that. So again, our mandate of global R&D quality is to ensure safety and well-being of all the clinical trials, the subjects, the patients, and ensuring, the clinical trials and regulatory submissions are supported with the top-notch sort of, technology and processes. So again, my role sort of think of it sits at the intersection of data analytics and platforms for R&D quality, and has leadership oversight of delivering, data and digital initiatives. So I'm very much focused on driving value-based innovation to essentially elevate this organization's digital and data capabilities, and move the organization from like sort of right now we are more reactive. So from reactive to a predictive organization where, most of our data can tell us the story of the future, and we are able to make, the right decisions, mitigate the risks, and kind of, like ensure that all the trials and all the submissions are happening, as per the way. So it's very critical for a biopharma company to, operate risk averse to essentially be compliant to all the GXP, to be compliant with that. So again, I think my role is pretty important in that sense, that it's kind of ensuring how we get there faster. And, our workers who are at the moment, in a lot of areas, very heavy manual, a lot of processes are heavily manual. How can those be moved to automated and, sort of we can leverage emerging technologies in those areas.
Yeah, I have to imagine that there's always a lot of different things that are coming at you, right? I mean, one, that I can think of that definitely is impacting a lot of the clinical trial space is just the ability to get remote data and not have to have patients, going into sites. In addition to that, I mean, AI has to be, sort of having an impact on the things that you guys are doing in terms of productivity and things. But at the same time, I feel like our industry oftentimes moves slower, right? I mean, I have a frequent interaction with one particular larger pharma company that also, they leverage AI today, but at the same time, it's not the same AI that I can get access to outside of the pharma company that I think has more capabilities and can, actually do greater things. But the reality is it's not private, it's not protected, and it's just never going to fly inside of your kind of environment either. Just would love to know about any sort of emerging technologies that you have, and what sort of design principles are you leveraging inside of the environment that you have today?
Yeah, so, again, I think here I just want to focus a little bit on, the key issue that, people face or biopharmaceutical companies face with implementing emerging technology. So, most of the companies have the focus on how, let's get this, let's get that, instead of the why, which is, okay, what are we trying to solve for? So what I've seen is that organizations are rushing towards implementing technologies without defining the clear, like the problem or the why behind, why, to bring that in. So what I have done is like I've leveraged the design thinking a concept of, where the focus of your solution building is actually the customer or the patient. For us, it's patient, or the user. So it starts with essentially defining the problem statement first, and then trying to solve for the technology. So I think what I have tried to do is I've brought that into my organization to say, okay, whenever somebody comes to me and says, I want to solve, and usually people would come and say, hey, can you solve this problem with AI for me? So they never say that I have a problem solved for it. So what I've said is, okay, we are gonna approach this with problem first mindset and not solution first mindset. So I have like leveraged this again. It comes from design thinking. The roots are that, but bring that in first, so that way We are not chasing those shiny objects, but actually solving for the right problems. And essentially, if the problem solution is AI, then it's AI. But then a lot of times it could be simple automation. A lot of times it could be like a little process change. Sometimes it's actually just a people issue where they are actually not even understanding how the technology is working from them. So I've also seen many times it would be just a training error, like you gotta just get better training. So again, I think this is the mentality that I have brought in terms of like design principles. And then the other approach that I use is more of experimentation approach, where if we want to bring in machine learning, we want to bring in Gen AI. Let's not just bring the process and scale the technology. Let's start small. So like kind of create a minimal viable product, not spend more than 8 weeks or maximum maybe 3 months or 4 months on a specific problem. So once a problem is identified, let's try to think of the value of the problem. So if say we have identified the problem, we know that it's going to generate value, then let's like run an MVP. Let's make something super small, which can translate into like bringing a very small data set, trying to run an algorithm on it and trying to see what the results are. And if they are favorable, then expand on it. Because that's another piece where I see a lot of organizations just, spend a lot of money and say, we're gonna implement this, throughout the company, but they do not know that throughout the company, in biopharmaceutical, every department, it's not like very seamless integration. It is all the departments use tools differently. So so I think those are the two approaches.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to say that, hey, look, we want to implement this new technology that has glitz and glamour. But at the end of the day, what I hear you saying is, start with that problem first mindset and really work your way back into what is the best possible solution. Because it's funny, one of the companies also that I work with, that one of the chief scientists has said, hey, look, we really, you could say that we apply AI to the things that we do, but the reality is we're only using machine learning, and we're not using complex language models, to do the work that we're doing, at least at this point in time. And he's completely sort of opened my mind in terms of the levels that these different technologies can be applied as well.
Yeah. And then, the other piece of AI, which again is very critical, is a lot of times data. So even if, you found the right problem, you found, okay, this is how we're going to solve for it, you actually run an experiment and then you see that, the data that you were expecting in the results, which you actually, whenever you run that thing manually and you see the results, it differs. So what that means is a lot of organizations also have to clean the data, and essentially figure out a way to get to the unstructured data, which I think is more than the structured data, because everything we are doing these days, it's getting collected, so it's like adding more and more onto that unstructured data. So again, data is another part. So a lot of problems actually cannot be solved by AI if there is no data or the data is not accessible.
Yeah, I was involved, again in a different project earlier on during COVID, around different companies wanting to implement data catalogs, similar sort of activity. It was like all in preparation to be able to leverage the greater data sets that they had, and to me it's amazing where the technology has gone. What is the most innovative project you're currently working on at Takeda, and what impact do you hope that it'll have on the organization?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm currently trying to identify the potential of generative AI in the audit space. So essentially, across the R&D, we need to essentially, manage a lot of audits. And at the moment, as I shared, because nature of biopharma is very paper based. So currently the audit process is very, very labor intensive, very time consuming, and extracting that unstructured data, or tapping into those insights for for us to move to that predictive organization is not there. So like again, there are like, it's very difficult to generate valuable insights without any automated technology. So people are still doing it, but they are pulling data into some of the data visualization tools and trying to solve for that problem. So my goal is to apply generative AI in that space, and sort of has a solution that is like, you can access the front end, and you can ask, like how you prompt ChatGPT, you can prompt it and get all the audit related answers. And the reason it needs its dedicated space is because of the sensitive nature, GXP. So essentially that's one of the pieces that I'm exploring, one of the projects. And I'm hoping that, it can revolutionize that audit space. So it's, again, the goal will be to be able to, get to that decision making place, and still have a human in the loop. So have a solution where we still have the human in the loop to interact with the AI. So we keep improving that solution. So fingers crossed, if it shows positive results, there's a possibility to expand it across our enterprise. But yeah, I think it's exciting how Gen AI has picked up as technology in the last 1 year or so, and I'm excited to possibly bring that into this space.
Yeah, very interesting for sure. And there's a lot of talk, I feel like, right now around Gen AI and the impact that it can have in lots of areas. And I can only imagine in the regulatory space, just all the stuff that you have to constantly be on top of, and just the vast amounts of information, would be very helpful to have Gen AI applied to that as well. What's the greatest leadership advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, so again, I mean, it's something that like came as a feedback, but I thought it was a very, very great advice. And I think the greatest piece of leadership advice that I've received is around active listening, which is trying to listen to people with no intention of responding, and basically listening more than speaking. And I think it has really, really changed the trajectory of how I've noticed everything works when I've tried to apply that. And it's a very, very valuable advice for leaders, because not only it fosters more innovative culture, but it actually allows your team members to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. And again, if every person feels that way, then they are more open. It creates like psychological safety. And then I feel like everybody shares their ideas more openly. There is more collaboration. And as a leader, it's actually very good to first hear out everybody's ideas, and like get those diverse perspectives. And then, kind of say, okay, this is the best way to go. And this is how we can make decisions. So I think it has helped me make more like for a more inclusive and diverse decision making, sort of. So yeah, so I think I would that would be possibly the best one I've received so far. Again, I have received another one which says, be authentic, which again, I'm a very authentic leader, but I sometimes see that it doesn't really work well, because sometimes you have to adjust yourself to the audience. And even though you can still show up as your authentic self, but if audience wants a specific, sort of, they want you to show up as a specific person, you have to do that. So I still think that active listening advice is probably the one that I always keep in back of my mind, and it's a very difficult one to practice.
Yeah, for sure. It is not easy to always be the active listener either. And it's one of those things where you just have to continually sort of think about the questions, I guess, that a beginner would oftentimes ask, which isn't always easy whenever you have experience, right? So yeah. What inspires you?
Yeah, so I'm very very inspired by strong female role models. So essentially, women leaders who have paved path for other young leaders, women leaders who have broken glass ceiling. So again, a lot of positions and roles where there were no women. There women couldn't even imagine being there. I think I like get inspired by them a lot. I also get inspired by like kindness and authenticity, like and kindness as in I was just thinking about it the other day. A lot of people, like, they go and they donate blood, and the donation is for saving someone's life, but then they just do it in quiet. And then there are people who donate money in quiet. So there are a lot of people who are very kind, but they don't want anybody to know about it. So whenever I hear of those kind of acts, they inspire me a lot, because they it's the humanity. It brings out a great human being in them. So I get inspired by that a lot. And then in general, I'm very inspired by spirit of collaboration and innovation. Here at my company, so my company is essentially Japanese. It evolved from Japanese culture. So the company's the value of the company is PTRB, which is patient, trust, reputation, and business, which is something where company is not focusing on the business first, but it's saying let's focus on patient first, build the trust with patient, and that's gonna make us reputable, and then the business will come along. So the company has been there for 243 years, and it has lived on those values. So I get really really inspired by that, and working for such a company which doesn't focus right on the numbers or the business, and actually focuses on the patient.
I really appreciate all of that. I mean, I think it's so important to have a real focus on the patient at the end of the day, and yeah, it's
Yes.
just absolutely critical. What concerns you?
Yeah, so I am concerned by the decline in mental health. And actually, there is a lot of stats that's coming out from World Mental Health Association. And again, I just want to plug in, this is a World Mental Health Month. So, again, it's a message for us to kind of stop and just focus on, where our mental health is, and reflect back on that. So I think I'm concerned by that, because even though technology is our friend, but excessive technology has actually led us to exposure to information that in past we used to consume that much information in multiple years, but now we are consuming that information in minutes, and sometimes within hours. So again, because our brain has evolved, but it hasn't still evolved at the pace technology is evolving at. So even though I'm a very very optimist when it comes to technology and how it could support us, but I think I'm concerned by the mental health decline, and not only for adults and aging population, but for young children who have open access to social media, and basically their brains are not fully developing. So again, that concerns me a lot. And then the other piece that concerns me is overall diversity in technology and clinical trials. So again, when you read back when COVID vaccination came, and if you look at some of the data later on, so a lot of there were a lot of side effects for women, from those vaccines, because what happened was, even though the vaccines were tested, but they were only tested on certain population that was available at that time. So it seems like women were probably not considered in the clinical trials properly. So that concerns me, because a lot of drugs that are that are basically, we need that, it's for unmet needs, but a lot of them are not tested on specific people. And what it does is that when they are launched, people are taking it, but it hasn't been tested on them. So it's actually not helping them, but actually deteriorating their health. So I think I would say that's another concern. I know my company and including a lot of other biopharma company are now part of health equity, where they're ensuring, that all the clinical trials will include all the populations and, different races and so forth. So I think there's a lot of work being done in that space. But yeah, I would say those are my two concerns. And climate change in general, it bothers me because I mean it's I think it's concern for everybody, but it's actually real. It's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I think you have to look no further than the hurricanes that have just made their way through
Yes.
Florida, right? And essentially they were showing the hurricane from space and how wide it overall was, as well, that it could be seen from the International Space Station. I saw that
Oh
just
wow.
this afternoon. So just an amazing, thing to know that global warming definitely is impacting us. It's interesting too that you brought about this discussion of technology and the amount of technology that essentially is out there, but also the amount of information that's constantly flowing at
Yes.
us, right? And the ability to
Yeah.
consume, just so much information. I grew up in the days whenever you had to go to the library. That was the only way that you would get,
Yeah.
additional information other than whatever was in your house. You had to use encyclopedias for book reports and those kind of things. Had to know how to look through an encyclopedia in the first place to find anything. Yeah, it's such a new world. I look at both the benefits and and the cost, right, of just being
Yes.
impacted by so much information. How do you look at that? How do you look at that, and how do you weigh, I guess the benefit versus the current concern that you have?
Yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, I think it's also if you think from neuroscience perspective, it's like our brains have not evolved that much. So either, there should be mechanisms where we do something for our brain every day, which is, again, I think meditation is something which I like try to keep a habit of doing, because with so much information, again, it's like it's coming at a speed of light, but then our brains are still the same. You are still the same human being. And honestly, when I look back at 2020 to now, it has increased more and more and more. I remember when there was a pandemic, like there was a point where I felt information overload because everything moved to digital, and we were interacting with every single person on Zoom or these meetings. And I felt that's when I started feeling it, like I felt like I'm drowning in the sea of information. And how do I like I not get so much information and just get, to your point, that synthesized version, where you go to library, you actually enjoy that little bit piece of information you get. So again, I think that's definitely very, very concerning. And I mean, unless there are mechanisms in place that help our brain, evolve or grow at the speed, or keep up with that technology, I think eventually it is detrimental. It's not something human beings are made for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it goes to another. I mean, I'm sure I could talk about this forever, but
Yes.
to me, it goes to another conversation that I recently had with somebody where I had just said, look, the whole idea of our education and the way that we were sort of brought to learn and understand things through our education was created through the idea that that essentially there's a need for workers, and we need to train people so that they understand how to work in the environment that they're in. The one thing, and I'm sure I could go to a list of other things, but the
Yes.
one thing that I sort of think about frequently is, how do you best use the mind that you have, and use that to your advantage, right? And train me on that, and I, at the end of the day, could leverage the world of information that's ahead of me. But if you don't train me on that and I don't pick it up myself, then essentially we leave all of this untapped potential behind potentially, because we're stuck in sort of this industrial way of training people or educating people today. And that I think about that as a very near future challenge, that eventually people are going to be looking around saying, hey, look, AI was supposed to make stuff simpler, and some of the new technologies that we were supposed to make things easier. But at the end of the day, all it did was ease this path. And at the end of the day, I still only have this one mind, and I have to figure out how am I best going to use that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like AI and future of work. So there are a lot of studies that and reports that probably you must have seen too. But like it's very clear that AI is changing future of work and how we live. Again, like how we live, it has already transformed it, but then how we work is also changing. So maybe in next 1 year, there might be a hologram of us talking to each other, rather than being here. So, I mean, and it's inevitable, right? So it's like, it is something that's going to happen. Either, we are the early adopters, or we like keep like, missing out the train and say we are the last one to get, will be the last one to get on the train. So it's unavoidable. So yes. So to your point, I personally like think everybody should have like a, like what do you call it? How we like restart our machines, like computers, to have like that hygiene, or to make sure, all the cookies are clear. Like, so like when we move from one location to another, one Wi-Fi to another, we restart our machine. So I think, this is because, and also this is World Mental Health Month. So we should all like kind of think of that routine in our everyday life, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever works for people. I think we can like, and I urge people to like just start with 5 minutes, whether it's just sitting, deep breathing, reflecting. And, it could be, mindfulness meditation. It could be journaling. So I've also seen people trying to, like empty their mind by journaling your thoughts, because then it creates space for new thought. So I think like how we clean our machines, how we clean our homes, there's got to be a way to, like clean our brains, and then, give that a break. And so it can, absorb more information, because, clearly it's like impacting mental health. And again, I don't have the exact numbers, but according to some studies in general, right, like humans don't use most of their brain. So we use very little percentage of our brain. We are operating through that. So again, either the mechanism of, how we keep that mental hygiene, or the other mechanism of how, we can tap into more of that brain capacity would be maybe future of technology.
Last question. What excites you?
Yes. Again, from our conversation, you must have seen definitely future of technology excites me as much as it makes me scared. It excites me as well. But my true passion actually lies in traveling and being an explorer. So, I love to explore new cultures, new places, actually meet people from different countries. And learn about basically like how that country works, how people are living there, etc. And again, what I've seen so far is all the humans are same wherever you go in the world. It's all the same, but it excites me. Like I think that's what is something that I always look forward to. What would be my next travel? And then the other piece that I would say more than excite, amazes me and awes me is nature, which is again every like fall the trees changes their color, and then they shed off, and then there is spring, there are cherry blossom there. So I think it just amazes me, and also how beautiful nature can be. And once you are in nature, you forget about technology, you forget about all your problems. So I think I would say that's what is something that I try to make the most time for whenever I can.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's a great sort of outside of work, sort of activity, but also whenever you think about inside of work, all of the global aspects and thinking more globally is something all of us need to continually keep in mind as well. Well,
Yeah.
Nishtha Jain, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success podcast. I greatly appreciated you being here and for sharing, your journey with us. I greatly appreciated the story for sure behind it, and wish you all the luck with Gen AI at Takeda.
Yeah, thank you, Don. It was a pleasure to be here. And, I look forward to connecting with you in future. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.